And before this video begins, I would just like to thank my Asbantium level patron, Foul and Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. We're just a few months away from Doctor Who Season 2, or Series 15 if you're a purist, or Season 41 if you're a super purist. At Christmas, we got a fresh new trailer giving us a nice glimpse at the upcoming rollercoaster of the next series of the show. And also, there are some leaks on the down low. You probably know by this point that I wasn't a huge fan of Season 1 for a few different reasons, but despite this, I'm pretty optimistic and excited for what's still to come. And obviously, because I'm a YouTuber, I thought it would be worth exploring why I think Season 2 will be a lot better than Season 1. Also, I just think it's fun to compare thoughts and predictions going in and then those afterwards. You get to see how right or wrong you were. And in the case of Season 1, I was pretty wrong. So, without further ado, here's why Doctor Who Season 2 will be better than its predecessor. Okay, so I already alluded to it, but I don't think Season 1 was all that good. I definitely wanted it to succeed, to start things off with a bang, but it was a very disjointed series that often felt like it had been cut down from a much longer episode count. And a lot of the episodes felt like they were a bit too short, with rushed endings. The way the series was structured felt very slapdash and inconsistent, with very few memorable monsters or settings. And obviously, there was all the infamous forced emotion with the Doctor crying constantly, which didn't feel earned. Lastly, we had that terrible finale, which really kind of soured me on Doctor Who as a whole and killed a lot of my enthusiasm, making me doubt if the show was even for me anymore, like I said in my review of that series. I really wanted to love Season 1 as a fresh start and a return to the show I fell in love with, but I just couldn't get into it. And Joy to the World was also a bit of a miss for me too, which is a shame because it had that great part with Anita in the middle. I was ready to tap out. But from what we know about Season 2 now, I'm actually cautiously optimistic. You know what they say, every time I try to leave, they reel me back in again. First of all, Season 2 seems to straight up look better visually. A big issue I had with Season 1 was just how flat and dead it looked. The colours were pretty muted, the cinematography kind of bland, and it just seemed a world away from the very cinematic and gorgeous look of the Capaldi era, for example, or the very colourful and bold tones of the first Davis era. But from what I can see, Season 2 manages to improve upon those visuals. The contrast and saturation looks so much better. And I know it's the job of a trailer to show the absolute best parts, so you can't always trust what they show you. But given that Season 2 has had a little bit longer for editing and effects work, I'm very optimistic that this season will simply look really good and a marked improvement over its predecessor. And that's a general thing I think Season 2 will do better. A lot of times, the first season of a TV show will be weaker than the second, because the production crew are still getting to grips with certain challenges or routines, no matter how experienced they are as individuals. This means a lot of first seasons are learning experiences of sorts, especially if there are crew members who haven't worked together before. So when it comes to Season 2, they all have more experience, more efficiency, and the product improves as a result. The writing is usually tighter, the actors more comfortable within their roles, and yeah, there's just more experience all around. So that also gives me more optimism for Doctor Who Season 2 because of that experience and efficiency that might not have necessarily been there the first time around. This also extends to the companion writing. Listen, I enjoyed Ruby in Season 1, even if her mere existence gave me an existential crisis because she's the first companion I've been older than. I thought Millie Gibson did a decent job with what she was given, and she was pretty fun to watch. But Ruby wasn't a particularly great companion. She just looked a lot better coming off the back of the absolutely terrible Yaz and Ryan. It also didn't help that Ruby was pretty much defined by her involvement in the main story arc. A mystery box with an ultimately botched and badly written ending. But she left at the end of the season, with season 2 promising the introduction of new companion Belinda Chandra. Almost certainly no relation to Rani, by the way. From what we've seen, Belinda already seems a lot more promising than Ruby, even if she is another modern day British companion. Farada Setu was great in Andor, and I thought she had a very solid performance as Mundi in Boom, so I'm already optimistic about her acting as Belinda. But also from a writing level, she's not a starry-eyed 19-year-old like Ruby was, so there's a lot more to work with there, more of an interesting dynamic, and judging by the promotional clip of the first episode they played in Unleashed, an actual job and a proper life on Earth, rather than just being a bit of a blank void like Ruby often ended up being, despite having such a complicated backstory. And this more interesting dynamic is already clear in the trailer, since it seems as though Belinda is an unwilling TARDIS traveller, because there's that moment of her demanding the Doctor take her back home. I always like dynamics like these, where the companion isn't really a willing participant and just wants to get home. After all, that's how the very first companions were introduced at the beginning of the show's history. And even better, it leads to companion arguments, which we had absolutely none of with the Doctor and Ruby. They got along almost too well. Right from the beginning, they were like best friends who had been travelling together for ages. It led to one of the most frustrating missed opportunities in the finale, when Ruby found out the Doctor was there on the night her mother abandoned her, and she didn't get mad at him for trying to find out who she was, and also not telling her he had gone there to begin with. It just felt like a slam dunk opportunity for character drama, but they dropped the ball. However, where Belinda is a slightly older companion who is clearly more self-assured and has a more assertive personality, it's already clear that we're going to finally see the return of companions who call the Doctor out and have some proper real friction with him, something the show desperately needs. Some of the best moments of modern Doctor Who have seen the companions clashing with the Doctor, rather than just blindly following along and obeying. It adds character. It allows us to see their personality and deeper layers. It makes the bond between the two main characters stronger because we see how they deal with and overcome adversity within their relationship. So I'm very hopeful for Belinda as a companion because she's poised to actually provide these kinds of very important character beats. Speaking of, it seems like we're also set for some more grounded storylines. I'm going to get into some spoiler territory here, so skip to whatever timecode is on the screen if you want to avoid minor things we know from filming leaks. One of the major things we've already been shown is the return of Ruby as a non-companion side character on Earth, much like Martha in Series 4 for example. However, we also know from set reports that she's going to have a relationship storyline, which seemingly plays a major role in the overall plot arc of the series and comes back up again in the finale. And that's fantastic news. In Season 1, Ruby's home life was almost non-existent. We even had something like a 5-month stretch between Space Babies and Devil's Cord without the plot addressing that at all, or seeing Carla's reaction to finding out about the Doctor and this new weird lifestyle, which is pretty shocking considering Davis wrote characters like Jackie and Francine, whose dynamics with the Doctor were an integral part of storylines and the relationships with the companions. So it's great to see that we're actually going to be getting some proper grounded storylines this time around. A chance to see some normal everyday life. And sure, we kind of got that in 73 Yards, but it doesn't exactly count because it was an aborted timeline. Another big thing Season 2 seems poised to do is provide some much needed answers, specifically when it comes to Mrs. Flood, who has been a mystery ever since her first appearance in Church on Ruby Road all the way back in 2023. The ending of that episode really built her up as a huge mystery, which Empire of Death doubled down on twice, making it really seem like this character has deep knowledge of the Doctor and possibly great powers. We still don't know if Mrs. Flood is going to be an evil or a good presence, which makes her even more fascinating, yet we still don't have any answers whatsoever. all we know for sure is that she exists independently of Ruby, since she's shown to still exist even within the timeline where the goblins eat baby Ruby. But outside of that, all we really know about her is her ability to directly address the audience, which will surely have to have some kind of explanation given in season 2, right? Russell T Davies previously said, or at least implied, that Mrs. Flood is a 2-season mystery narrative, so we're definitely due some answers. And that seems certain, like I said, since she appears in the trailer for season 2 and set leaks suggest her involvement in the Rubber Hose animation episode, which by the way also seems to imply another Harbinger character due to the movie being called Harvest Bringer. Maybe this means Mrs. Flood is another member of the Pantheon, explaining her knowledge of Sutek's arrival in Legend of Ruby Sunday. But whatever she is, thankfully, Season 2 seems to actually be set to give us a concrete answer to that question. Whether it's good or bad is still yet to be seen, but at least we will know. Lastly, and this is a big thing for me, is Season 2's apparent return to more familiar sci-fi waters, rather than Season 1's more fantastical approach. Of course, I do expect we'll still have a bunch of fantasy-based stories, since that's the larger direction Davis seems to be wanting to take Doctor Who in. But from what we've seen so far, we have some very traditional villains like robots, but also some more unconventional yet still sci-fi ideas, like the aforementioned Rubber Hose animation villain. And yes, it's Rubber Hose, not Cuphead. It also appears that we have an underwater episode, which hasn't been fully done in 10 years. So that's something fresh and new, you know, compared to season 1's revolutionary settings of a space station, 1800s Britain, and modern day Britain. And according to the Doctor Who Filming Locations Twitter, which is usually quite accurate, one of the episodes is supposedly a space Eurovision story, which would be really novel and fun. And yes, I know Big Finish already did one, but they've done everything by this point, usually throwing in Jackie Tyler and River Song 2 for the sake of it. But it's always different when the show does something, obviously, because it's the primary medium for Doctor Who. I wasn't really a fan of season 1's settings and genre experimentation. I thought it was all a bit too much too soon. So if season 2 is going to focus a bit more on traditional sci-fi, I absolutely won't complain about that, and actually makes me more excited for the season, because that's when I think Doctor Who shines the most. We don't even know yet when season 2 will come out for sure, but I can definitely say I'm cautiously optimistic for it. Emphasis on the cautiously. I know it was filmed too early for them to really take any kind of fan or critic response into account, but I think it's definitely clear that the production team gained more collective experience and ability over the course of making season 1, which they could then apply to season 2 and make it a better, more cohesive and tight experience. Everything I've seen of the season so far looks and feels so much more interesting and exciting than what came before, for all the reasons I already mentioned in this video. Belinda seems set to be more compelling and better characterized as a companion than Ruby ever was. The narrative seems more cohesive and grounded than the stunted one of season 1, which just had Sutek randomly show up at the end. There's more of a focus on sci-fi, and just in general, it seems like an all-round tighter and more interesting season that will actually answer a lot of the questions we've had for some time now. Of course, like I already mentioned, trailers can often be deceiving, since they're designed to only show the best bits. So I won't let myself get carried away with excitement, but I definitely think it will be a step up in quality this time around, at least visually and in terms of acting. The most important part is obviously the writing, which is what I'm still very worried about, because Russell T Davies, despite being one of my favourite Doctor Who writers, didn't impress me too much in season 1. His talent seemed to have been diminished somewhat, whether that was because he was overworked or he just doesn't have the spark anymore. So hopefully things are better this time around, and hopefully we actually get some other writers getting a go. But what about you? Are you excited for Doctor Who Season 2? Do you also think it will be better than Season 1? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron, Fowlon Cortez, my Platinum level patron, Matthew Burns, and all my Gold level patrons, Chris Douglas, Daniel Shillito, and Seb Falcor. Thank you so much for your support.